Today's forum, Metropolitan Metamorphosis, is sponsored by Smith & Hale, represented by Ben Hale and his associates. Let's thank them for their support. Can we please have a round of applause? Prior to our forum today, the Downtown Commission will present the 4th Annual Smithy Award. I'd like to introduce our host and our moderator today, Kyle Katz. Please take over. The honors are yours.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Downtown Commission, I'd like to welcome you all to our presentation of the 4th Annual Harrison Smith Awards. The Smithy was created by the Commission to honor the vision and leadership of our founder and past chair, Bill Smith. Although Bill is no longer with us, his impact is felt every day in our downtown, and his desire for a positive urban experience permeates every Downtown Commission meeting. Today, we recall Bill's vital and lasting contributions by celebrating projects that reflect his character, projects that, regardless of size, are bold, intelligent, inclusive, and raise the bar for the development that follows. The 2013 Smithy Awards will be presented by the Commission's chair, Steve Whitman.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here every year to do this, and it's a very exciting moment. We go through a process of trying to choose the projects that we want to recognize, and sometimes that's difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because there tend to be more than one or even two at a time. By the way, that's a very good thing to have. We're seeing some wonderful stuff done. We have today 2 projects that will receive our award. I am going to call representatives of these folks, all of the folks associated with each of these developments, and if you would, hold your applause until all of them come up for each of the separate projects. The first project we have today is very exciting in terms of the scale, in terms of the size, and in terms of the quality. It's always fun to have a large project, and it's fun to have a project that is prominent, but it's wonderful for our community to have a project that is of top quality in terms of design and product, both on the inside and the outside. And our first project today is the Downtown Hilton Hotel. It's, reading from the news clips, $140 million in cost. It's 532 rooms. It's right on High Street near Nationwide Boulevard. It's a major building, and as I said, what I'm particularly excited about is the way it was done. It's just wonderful. With that, I would like to have some of the folks who helped put this deal together come up. First of all, the property owners, the Franklin County Convention Facilities Authority, Bill Jennison. If you'd come up, Bill, please. The architects involved, HOK, Chicago office, go to Grindheim, is he go to here? Moody Nolan, Kurt Moody. The construction manager, Kyle Rooney, with Turner Construction Company. And with Smoot, Mark Kane. And with the Downtown Hilton Hotel itself, Chris Coffin. The Downtown Hilton Hotel. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Great project. Now, for our second project, one of the things that we try to do in the city of Columbus, as I said, it's always wonderful to have the great big projects. But if you want to really have an urban area that has a sparkle to it, you need all kinds of things. You need new buildings, you need old buildings, you need big buildings, you need small buildings. You need buildings to do different kinds of things. We need residential, we need office space down here, we need retail, and we need places for people to eat and to buy food. This last one is a very exciting project. It is Hills Market downtown on North Grand Avenue. I'm going to guess that most of the people in the room have been there. Again, it's a project, this is an adaptive reuse project. It's the reuse of an old building. I remember it when it was the auto body shop there that Bob Doak had many years back. But it is now a wonderful market. And again, to me, the interesting and exciting thing is the quality level. If you walk inside, it's exciting. The products that they have to offer are exciting. The design of the building is exciting. The location is wonderful, and it adds to the area that it's in. So we've gone from the huge hotel to the small, little, interesting exclamation point or jewel that we have in downtown. Hills Market. Would you folks come up as I call your name, and please hold the applause until the end. The property owners, the Edwards Company, Jeff Edwards, and Randy Walker Real Estate Services. Randy, you're here. The architects, Jim Rudy with Lupton Roush Architects. The general contractor, Multicon Construction Company, Randall Bessaquin. And the Hills Market, Kyle Baker. Are you here today, Kyle?
I'll accept the awards on behalf of those people.
Kyle, you're going to have some plaques on your wall. This is a great project. I'm excited. I've been there a lot, and I enjoy it, and it's a great thing for downtown Columbus. Hills Market, thank you very much.
Steve, thank you very much. I'd like Rob, Brett, and Joel to join me, if you will. This will be very conversational. There'll be time at the end for questions and answers. Please start thinking about your questions. And Rob, I want to kick it off with you. Vote Center Insight is a Columbus-based firm that does national real estate analysis. Could you give us briefly an overview of the health of the Columbus downtown market right now?
The residential market.
Overview of everything, and concentrate on residential if you'd like.
Well, the residential market is probably the best I have seen it in 30 years. I mean, I've been in Columbus conducting market studies for well over 30 years, and I have not seen a better downtown rental market. We just completed a survey recently, and we're showing a vacancy rate of less than 3% among the newer properties that we surveyed. We're seeing, obviously, we have an awful lot of product in the pipeline right now that is going to impact the overall marketplace. But I see a very bright future ahead for downtown Columbus in terms of housing, in terms of the rental piece of it. There's a lot of questions about the condominium side, the for sale side. That obviously has been impacted by the national recession. We've had perception problems among lenders about what condominiums are all about. But I think the long-term prognosis for condominiums is going to be very good as Generation Y, or the millennials as they're called, and even empty nesters begin to take a look at these choices as possible housing choices in the future. So the apartment market is very strong. The condominium market is going to take some time to catch up, but I still see a very bright future for downtown housing.
As you travel nationally, are there things you see in other urban markets that, if imported to Columbus, would help either maintain or accelerate our momentum and development?
Well, I think one of the things that we might be missing downtown right now, at least from a housing perspective, is affordable housing. I think that we have got a very good variety of choices of market rate housing, but on the affordable side, the housing that's going to be for the service workers, for potentially teachers, police officers, this type of employment, we don't have a lot of choices. And I think for us to be a holistic city, a city that provides opportunities for housing for all types of people, we really need to look at the affordable side. So I think that's one. On the other side of that, I think also when we talked about condominiums, we need to come up with some lower cost choices on the for sale side. And I think that will come. I'm also very excited to see that I think the East Franklinton will provide some of that I see a lot of opportunity there for affordable housing that could provide that sort of housing choice. So, I think in the future, if we can address some of those issues, I think we'll make a much better city to live in.
Joel, I want to turn to you on this. The Pizzuti companies both develop here in Columbus and, of course, across the country. Are there things that you're seeing in other communities that you'd like to see imported to Columbus?
Well, yeah, more construction development activity. But, and Kyle, we talked about this, but one thing we've noticed throughout our travels is that public art is a much larger component in a lot of the markets, some of which are comparable to Columbus and some of which are not. It's easy to look at New York and the things they do on Park Avenue and throughout different neighborhoods, or Chicago, but there are cities more similar to Columbus, Kansas City, St. Louis, Portland in their size and their demographics that have a real focus and a real attention being paid to public art. And it's not just, commissioning, it's putting together a thoughtful group who wants to look at both local, national, international artists. It's a great asset for the community. It creates a year-round attraction for people, but it also just enhances the environment. So it's one thing we've noticed.
Let's talk about public art for a second. There are tools being used by other communities in which, in exchange for incentives from the government would say to you, fine, we'll give you for instance, a 15-year tax abatement, but in exchange, we want 0.5% or a percentage point of your project costs to go to public art. Brett, you are developing, along with Daimler, a $50 million project at 250 North High. If the city had said to you, you have to dedicate $250,000 or $500,000 to public art, how would that have gone down with you and your partners?
Well, I think that the idea of creating something, whether it be public art, pocket parks, something that benefits the surrounding community environment is one that we're fully supportive of. And the city has done a great job in allocating dollars to help make that happen. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of things that we would like to see happen. There's a lot of things that this community needs, and sometimes making the economics work are challenging. But I think Columbus is doing a really good job at trying to assist in that. Pocket parks, you see what's happened around the Commons, at the Scioto Mile. Those kinds of gathering places, those kinds of attractions really do spur development. They're incredibly beneficial for a variety of reasons, and we'd like to see more of it.
So as a developer, you would exchange for the incentives a portion of the development costs going toward public art and park space.
Yeah, I think so. We have in that building, for example, there is a section of the site that we are using for a public park. And it might not be art per se, but we've got outdoor furniture. There'll be programming. To us, it's kind of our landscape architecture, which is our form of art. And that part of the site could have easily been used for additional development, and we elected not to, for the good of both the project and the surrounding area.
I think that what that's going to do is really make downtown that much more attractive to housing, because a lot of the questions that I get as a market analyst is, where do we hit the end? When are we going to be overbuilt? And Joel and I talked about that briefly. At some point, we may hit that point, but I don't see a bottom to this. And as long as we continue to add the types of amenities that Brett is talking about and that you're referring to, I don't see a real bottom to it at this point. So I'm really excited to see some of the commitment to the public art issue that you described, and also the riverfront development. I think is terribly exciting. That is going to be a real major attraction, at least for downtown housing, which eventually will lead to more employment.
Brett, let me stay with you for a second. You've developed thousands of apartments here in Central Ohio and beyond, but you're relatively unknown. You've come out with this Liv Kaufman brand as recently as a year ago. Could you introduce that brand to this audience, and could you talk about what differentiates a Liv Kaufman apartment from other communities?
Sure. It's, we started our group about 3 years ago, and really we started the group under the feeling that there was something lacking in both our work and in what the existing product that was being delivered. And what was lacking for us was kind of the incorporation of all the things that we're personally passionate about, and we think other people are too. So in our communities, we have decided to focus on building projects of high design. Again, going back to the art piece, our version of art is also in the architecture. We think that there's a tremendous amount that can be added to the landscape of this community to make it prettier, to make it more interesting, just in the design of the building. So high design, but then within the buildings, we're incorporating our personal passions for wellness, for philanthropy, for sustainability, for business innovation. And what we're doing is we're programming around those areas. So we're incorporating partnerships with a whole bunch of people in the community to give our residents the opportunity to come home from work and to change clothes and hop in with a group and go feed a meal at a shelter, to be able to go downstairs and use our business incubator, to take a class of varying kinds. We have artists in residence. We've got fitness classes nonstop. It's the kind of thing that we get excited about doing. Our group is participating in. The residents are excited about being a part of something that has all of that at their fingertips. And so when we talk about inspired living, when we talk about what our brand is, it's really focusing around building communities that have a much stronger sense of community, both within the community and hopefully making an impact in the surrounding community as well.
Does that excited response from the potential resident translate into a higher rent for you?
I don't know that it's easy for us to pinpoint that. We're not looking for higher rent in return. In fact, we actually build into our pro formas, there's real costs associated with all of these things. And so we build all of that cost into the pro forma and assume actually that it's our way of being a for-benefit business, that we're actually going to make less money by spending money on programming, by spending money on philanthropic activities, by contributing our share. And if people choose to live in our communities, and if in some way we can touch them, if in some way they benefit from being a part of our community, then that's how we'll measure our success. I think it also will allow us economically to have greater occupancy, maybe more rent, but we're not counting on that.
Okay, thank you. Interesting. Rob touched on something earlier, and ULI Columbus just released their 2014 study. In it, they talked about a potential reverse migration where suburban firms will move downtown in order to chase and follow the workforce that's taking residence. Is that taking place right now, Rob, Joel, Brett?
I believe it is. I think nationally, you asked about national trends, and this is not one that Columbus is missing. I think that we're right in the middle of it, and that people are craving a different experience. So, since the 50s and President Eisenhower and the Highway Act and everything we built to create these outer belts and all these suburban areas, that's been the focus for 55, 60 years. And with a minor interruption from 2008 till 2011, developers at the turn of the century started refocusing on downtowns. And great cities are balanced. Great cities have to have healthy suburban areas, but they also have to have a really healthy inner core. So, to the extent that, the next 15, 20 years, whatever the cycle is, going to be focused on downtown, I think people are going to want to live down here. People are going to want to spend their leisure time down here, and we think ultimately that's going to drive tenants back downtown because they want to attract the best and the brightest, and the best and the brightest want that kind of environment.
And Joel, one of the interesting things is that a lot of the suburban communities are recognizing that creation of that experience, and you see a lot of communities that are suburban communities that are trying to replicate that experience in their own downtown. I think Creekside is a great example of that it's an urban project that in spite of some of its outcome, I still think it's a very good urban project. Dublin is certainly looking at that with the Bridge Street project. Westerville is looking at it. Worthington is looking at it. So these communities recognize that is a positive environment for their communities, and just like downtown Columbus, they're competing for this very young talent pool that's interested in living in these experience areas.
How do you, we'll talk about the suburban and urban competition for tenancy. We're winning on a residential basis. Let's talk about the office market for a moment. If they're replicating all the great urban attributes in a New Albany, in a Gahanna, in Dublin, what do we compete with?
Well, I think that there's a lot of question on what's going on in the office market today. I mean, we all know that the internet has had a profound effect on how offices operate and the way people telecommunicate. I'm not exactly sure what the total impact is going to be, Kyle, because it's going to be less important to be in a certain location at a certain time. And it seems like we do have a workforce that we have found downtown that is becoming some of the tenants that are willing to do this reverse mobility. So I'm not so sure that the office space is too critical in terms of who we're going to draw to downtown. What it seems like is that people want the experience, and I keep harping on that point, but But the fact that we've got a lot of excitement happening downtown is going to continue to attract this Generation Y, the millennials, as I've described it, in huge numbers. And I guess office space becomes almost a backseat to that experience.
Well, let's shift back to residential very quickly. We're about to have about 1,000 residential units downtown that didn't exist 2 years ago. This next question is actually from my wife, who's in the suburban apartment business. Who are these people and where are they coming from?
Well, it's a good question, and it's one that we have to try to determine if they're new people and they're really coming here, or if we're just trading people from other apartment communities, from older communities into newer ones. There is some growth, there's no question about it. There are definitely a group of people that used to be buying, that traditionally were buying, on both ends of the spectrum, the empty nesters and the young professionals that aren't necessarily buying today. I think there's been a shift in how people view rental living, both because of what we've come through from a for sale standpoint, and hopefully because the product is evolving. And so what your apartment used to be 30 years ago, which was more by necessity than choice, today you can actually choose to live in something that is equal or nicer without having the commitment. So there's a new market that's been created of people. How deep it is, we're not really sure. Job growth is going to be critical in continuing to have more product online and successful.
I would just add that, again, I think it's to a certain degree, a shift in mindset, and people, young and old, they're excited about being in a walkable environment. So, my wife and I live in German Village. We built Maranova, and if you look at the composition of, our neighbors or people who live at Maranova, it's very diverse, and it's young, it's old, it's varying lifestyles. It's people with kids, it's people over the age of 65. I mean, it's fun. It's more of it's really more of a healthy mixture, a balance, if you will, of people. And we don't see that changing. We think that's going to become more pronounced for folks.
Joel, I agree with that. And one of the numbers that I wanted to throw out was, the baby boomer generation was 80 million people. Generation Y, the group that I think is supporting a lot of the apartments that we're seeing coming up downtown and will become a lot of condominium owners and eventually will buy into single-family houses, is 86 million. It's larger than the baby boomers. So that's why I'm so upbeat about the size of the market that has a potential to support what we're doing in downtown. Not only do we have this Generation Y, and I want to add that I think the typical profile of a tenant downtown is a single female, 28 or 29 years old, professional that doesn't plan to get married anytime soon and won't have kids anytime soon. So she's going to stay as a potential renter for a very long time. The other great thing is that we're being supported now by baby boomers. The fact that you turn 70 years old, you're not too wild about living in the suburban 4,000 square foot house. You want to be downtown in a walkable community that you can walk to the Ohio Theater, walk to the Palace Theater, walk to great restaurants, and experience downtown. And I think we're going to have both those groups, which happen to be the largest generations of our time, supporting downtown housing.
Well, let's stay with that for a second on the demographics. And let's combine that with the diversity issue. You touched on affordable housing before. We do. It's a misnomer. Affordable housing exists downtown. It has existed downtown for decades. Go right down the Town Street corridor. The trick really is new development for affordable housing. What has to take place for that to occur in Columbus, Ohio? And by the way, follow that up with why that's important to take place in Columbus, Ohio.
Well, I commented earlier, Kyle, about the importance is that we've got to provide choices for all households downtown, not just the very high-end households. And obviously, we're going to have to get some help from government sources to make that work. One of the programs that we work in often is the low-income housing tax credit program, and I think that represents a viable program to help create affordable housing. But I think what we're going to have to do is find other sources of money to help subsidize the cost of development. You just simply can't build new product today and expect to rent it at low rental rates, as I'm sure you guys can attest to.
And I would add that, folks are always trying to understand what government's role is in helping to create environments and generate progress. And there's a real opportunity for public-private partnerships to be more impactful going forward. So whether it's helping support infrastructure or creating tax-abated areas, doing things to quote-unquote level the playing field, You know, the argument over the years for the suburbs versus downtown has been one of money normally. And, you know, how can we, the government or public entities or, you know, what Rob is describing, some vehicles are going to have to be created and accelerated in order to bridge that gap so we can lower the cost so that not every apartment is at the $60, 70, 80 number, but some are in the low dollars and those kinds of things.
Joel, when I think of a neighborhood with a diverse array of residential options and a very strong commercial retail environment, I immediately think of the Short North. You're developing there now to complement the Pursuit Collection, boutique hotel, about 46,000 square feet of commercial space. Can downtown proper, the central business district, ever get to that energy level? Can we mirror what's happening in the Short North? Will it happen?
Well, there's a lot of space to fill in, Kyle. So, you know, I think it is. I think if you look at the way that the city has changed over the last 50 years, I mean, our orientation used to run east to west. And we ran down Broad Street and went through Broad and High and we had the State House and you went down to the river. And then, you know, the building of 71, the building of the Huntington Center, things started to shift and, you know, we blocked out part of the east side and there were some lines of demarcation. Today, we run south to north. So, you know, I think the 5 neighborhoods are basically the side of the peninsula. You move up to the core of downtown, the Arena District, the Short North, and ultimate campus. We've got this massive stretch of ground and our job is going to be how do we thoughtfully fill in all the gaps and then link them so that people feel comfortable. So there's absolutely a way to do it. It probably starts with trying to frame High Street and make sure that we, you know, create the framework that we can move east and west and south between the neighborhoods. But I think it's happening now. I think it can continue to happen.
Okay, Brett, Joel just talked to Open Space Downtown. I want to talk about the thought process that went into you and Daimler determining that, well, the vacancy rate downtown has basically hovered in the high teens for decades, and there's been no real rental appreciation since the Lashutka administration. How do you determine you're going to put a new building with 120,000 square feet of Class A office space up?
Well, it goes back to kind of how I've decided to go about development from the beginning, which has really always been testing product and creating product that doesn't currently exist or that there's a lack of, trying to be innovative, trying to be more creative. And I'm not suggesting that we're going to have 120,000 square feet of new office to come into downtown Columbus, but I think we will fill that up based on people wanting the kind of environment that we're creating, the kind of environment that exists at the Commons. It's there's a lot of office product. There's not a lot of great office product. There's not a lot of sexy office product. There's not a lot of product that is modern and kind of meets what the group of people that's in Columbus wants. And, you know, that's what we've done on the residential side. We've tried to continue to baby step our way into more innovative product that we want, that other people want. And this is just kind of another big jump. We think it exists, that same feeling exists on the office side as well as it does on the residential side. And I would just go back to your prior point. I think, you know, Joel made the point that it's not that it's going to happen. It is happening right now. Our project, the 2 projects that are happening across High Street, what's happened already at the Commons, I think there's already a tremendous infill opportunity that's happening right now around the Columbus Commons, going down to the side of the mile, the development that's happening there, you know, pull Miranova in, go across. I mean, there's a tremendous amount already happening that just hasn't come out of the ground yet.
You know, a series of questions for all 3 of you. I'll open it up. Would any of this downtown development be occurring without heavy governmental support, or the fact that existing building inventory is being purchased at dimes on the dollar?
For me, it's an easy no. There's no question that what the CDDC has done, what the mayor has done, what the officials of the city have done to make what's happened so far happen, and certainly what needs to happen going forward, it would not happen without them, no question about it.
Yeah, just from our own experience, to Brett's point, we're in a unique time where the public and private sector are, jointly focused on the core of our city. And there is no way the Joseph would be going forward if it hadn't been for the role that the city of Columbus played. Whether it was assisting in the financing of the parking garage or working through some of the infrastructure challenges we have. We never could have made the numbers work. And they're still pretty challenging as it is, but it certainly wouldn't have gone forward without their assistance.
You agree, Rob?
Yeah, and I think that we're obviously competing with a lot of cities across the Midwest and nationally for this talent pool that we keep talking about, and we've got to keep up the level of competition in order to be able to respond to this generation that I keep referring to. So, yeah, I agree with my two fellow speakers that, yeah, it would not happen without the involvement of our cities and without aggressive government action to make these projects occur.
Is it going to be possible, because Joel referred to this, all ships are benefited by a rising tide. We need prosperity, we need growth, we need new companies, whether they're grown organically here or brought from the outside. We've historically not been successful at bringing from the outside. Is that going to change, Rob?
I think it will. I mean, I don't have any empirical data to support that, but I do believe it's going to happen just because of all the assets that we have in Central Ohio. We have too many great assets to not make that happen with Ohio State, the state government, the employers that we have. It's going to happen. The fact that we're putting together a fabulous downtown with a lot of activity that's drawing in this talent pool, I think it's going to happen.
I want to turn our attention to retail. The chicken and egg debate that took place for so long. What's first, housing or retail? It's been answered. Housing is moving forward very quickly at a very rapid rate, and we're seeing a great population move downtown. How do you feel about retail? Is retail going to follow? What type of retail is lacking currently, and what has to take place to drive that forward?
I think that we have two interesting things going on. Number one, we have a healthy number of local retailers that are meeting great success in our downtown neighborhoods. But what's been most interesting to us is what some of the national retailers are thinking. So again, in the case of our mixed-use project, the Joseph, we allocated about 6,000 square feet for retail. It was all on the ground floor. During the process of attracting tenants, Anthropology expressed an interest in being in the core of our city. They looked at a number of locations. Thank God they picked ours. But it was eye-opening to listen to them and understand how they made a decision. We are basically getting the same footprint that they've put in Georgetown, Chicago, New York, urban Philadelphia. And instead of a 6,000 square foot store, they're building a 2-story, 10,000 square foot store. And it's because they're betting that the future of the core of our city is going to be that folks are going to want to live down here, they're going to want to visit the downtown. And, I'm hopeful, we're hopeful that that's the first of many to come. But it was great to listen to them describe why they wanted to be in our downtown.
I think the fact is that the face of retailing is changing almost daily. It seems like, Kyle, that these retailers are recognizing where the population's going. The typical tenant spends a lot of money on retailing dollars. They spend a lot of money on the internet. But I think that all of them, all the major retailers, have a long-term strategy to target these inner-city neighborhoods that are becoming real hotbeds for these concentrations of these types of households. So I think, similar to the experience that Joel's had with their project, that we're going to see a lot of major retailers designing these smaller, sort of boutique-style retail shops. They realize that most of their support is coming off the internet, I think, today, but I think they also need to have a street presence that's going to contribute to a strong retail base in the future downtown.
Brett, I'm sorry.
You asked what's lacking, and I would say everything is lacking. And Joel mentioned the strong local retailers that we have, and that's good enough. I mean, an Anthropology is amazing. It does wonders for us in getting additional national attention. But to have a Hills Market, to have a North Star, I mean, I think we have some of the best local executors in the country, to have Jenny's in our backyard. And so even if it's just that we start with, and what we're hopeful is that this will feed itself, that the momentum that we have in the core of downtown, in the short north, will start to continue to snowball. I think this is a very different conversation a couple of years from now than it is now. It's happening. It's just not quite there yet.
It'll be interesting to see gentrification take place. If more nationals come in, what's going to happen to the indigenous people? Do they become, if you will, and Vincent Cianci was in Columbus many years ago prior to his arrest. He's the former mayor of Providence, Rhode Island. He said and he transformed Providence, Rhode Island by basically saying that the artists are like the Marines. They establish the beachhead, and then come the attorneys. And I'm wondering if in the short north or areas like that, we do get national people. And if that happens, do we then get the indigenous players going to less expensive space in our CBD and having that process blossom once again? It'll be interesting to see play out.
I think the answer is yes.
Great.
That's just the natural progression.
Brett, you just mentioned Franklinton. What are the next hot areas in Columbus? And just take notes, everyone. What are the next hot areas?
Well, I think that there's existing hot areas that still have a lot of infill to do. So I think you'll still continue to see a lot of activity in the short north, a lot of activity in the core of downtown. Certainly with what's happening on the other side of the river, I would expect Franklinton to start to develop. You know, there's just, you know, as we were talking about earlier, there's plenty of opportunities for infill. So what's happening in Dublin, what's happening in New Albany, the suburban infill that's happening around a more urban concept, I think you're going to still, at this stage in the cycle, see those kind of already strong areas start to come back first with more development before you see a true next hot area.
And I would agree with Brett, but and also go one step further. In terms of Franklinton, again, that idea of this balance between the public and the private sector coming together, there's a lot of energy and focus being placed on that particular neighborhood. How do we improve, you know, behind Cosi going west to the railroad tracks, and then how do we go beyond the tracks to Mount Carmel West? You know, that's Memorial's metamorphosis will have a lot to do with that. You know, that's obviously the private sector being generous and contributing, but then the public sector is also, we think, going to create a great environment for folks to develop behind Cosi and then ultimately go west of the railroad tracks. So it's, you know, there's a great opportunity for us to do that. So we believe in that area.
Rob?
Yeah, and I had made the statement a couple of weeks ago at an Urban Land Institute event that the East Franklinton area would become the hottest neighborhood in 5 years. I won't back down from that. I think the interesting thing about East Franklinton is that you've got a blank slate there. There's virtually no households there. So you have an opportunity to really create an interesting, diverse neighborhood, which I think presents an opportunity. And I agree with Joel that a lot of the involvement of government is going to have a lot to do with that in terms of how that takes shape. And certainly with the announcement of Vets Memorial and Cosi and what's going on there is going to have a huge impact on that. To be walkable within that kind of development is fabulous, and I think that that's going to contribute a lot to the development of East Franklinton. You had mentioned about some other areas. I think there's some excitement about some of the smaller communities that actually have downtowns in central Ohio that could represent some opportunity. Canal Winchester, Groveport, Grove City. These are all areas that have the potential to develop their downtowns and create walkable urban environments, which is what people are looking for. And I think at the right price point, you can create that opportunity for those communities.
I want to move us to what I'm going to call the lightning round, in which I ask our panelists on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most desirable, to rank the following downtown attributes. We'll go this way. Rob, we'll start with you. So 1 to 10, entertainment options, entertainment and cultural options.
9.1. I'm just kidding.
He watches The Price is Right, obviously.
Yeah, $1. I don't know. 9. I would say 9 too.
All right. Green space.
8.
I'd say 7, but trending upwards. We need more of it.
Yeah, I'd say 8.
Okay. Retail, current retail.
4.
Well, that's a really low number, Rob.
I know.
You know, it's somewhere in the middle. You know, 4 or 5. I mean, we've got a lot of room to grow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's even lower. You know, 1, 2. There's a lot of room to
You
go.
want me to yell at you, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Next one, quality of design. Rob?
7.
I would say on the new product, it's at least 7. I think that, you know, from Brett's project to the courthouse to some of the things that lifestyle's doing to hopefully our project in the short north, the level of design has been raised significantly. So new things, I'd say, 8.
Great. Brett?
I'd say it's probably a 7. I still am kind of a, design snob. I'd like to see us get even edgier and more creative. I think there's a lot of room to grow still.
And there's the market is there to support that. We do need a diverse range of different exciting architectural designs in Columbus. I think I agree with you totally.
Yeah.
The area's energy, its vibe. What do you rate it, Rob?
Geez, I'd say 9 right now.
Okay.
Certain neighborhoods, I would agree, 9. Other neighborhoods, I would say have a lot of work to do.
CBD. Tell me CBD. Energy at CBD.
CBD, I think, is about a 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brett?
I think it's probably a 7, but it's really going in the right direction fast. I think it'll be a 10 in short time.
The pace of our momentum in developing downtown.
6 or 7.
Okay.
I'd give it a 7, and we need things to happen. There are a lot of things being planned, but we need things to happen more quickly.
I'd say it's close to a 9. There's a ton happening in a short amount of time.
Great.
When you really think back about where we were just a few years ago, there's a lot happening.
I've got just one more question prior to turning it over to the audience. You're each now given a magic wand in order to improve our downtown and move it forward. Rob, what do you do with it? Excuse me, Brett, I'll start at your end. What do you do with it, Brett?
The core of downtown,
Yes.
I think we need to just keep doing what we're doing. Just more infill, more diversity of projects, like Joel said, more pocket parks, more outdoor art, more innovation, more support from the government, more creativity, more kind of thinking outside of the box on how we can just continue to set ourselves apart.
I would focus on connectivity. We talked before about these 5 core neighborhoods downtown, and our downtown is it's enormous in its size. We're not going to do anything about it. So the key is, as each one of these neighborhoods develops in their own right, how do we connect all of them so that there is that opportunity to fill in those gaps and to create that comfortable transition from the south end all the way up to the campus.
Rob?
Yeah, I agree, Joel. I was thinking that exact same thing, and you said it, and you took away the thunder.
You should've let me go first.
I know. I thought of it afterwards, but you're absolutely right. We've got these great neighborhoods that are along this high street spine, and there's no easy way to get between them. And as you pointed out, we do have a huge downtown. It's much larger than the typical downtown areas of major cities, just geographically. And I would love to see a light rail system of some sort tying all these communities together that would really bring it to head, I think. So that would be my vision.
Rob, thank you. Light rail and public transportation were one of the many topic areas that I wasn't able to get to. You, however, as a CMT tradition, have the opportunity to ask any questions you wish. Please do not editorialize. This is not about you making a public statement. This is about you asking a question of the panel. So please, introduce yourself and ask away.
I'm Jay Smith, and I'm going to editorialize.
You're with the last name Smith today, you're allowed to.
On behalf of the family of Harrison Smith, we'd like to thank the Metropolitan Club and the Downtown Area Commission for doing this every year to honor the memory of my father. He was a wonderful father, and nobody ever cared more about downtown Columbus than Harrison Smith. My question, Joel, you mentioned that you live in German Village, and Marianne and I do too. I'm surprised we haven't seen each other on the street. But one of the things we like the most about German Village is that it is also very diverse in terms of incomes. We've got virtually everybody down there, and it's not unusual for someone who makes $600,000 a year to live next door to somebody who pays $685 a month in rent. In Vancouver, most projects are required to have all different types of housing within the individual project. Wouldn't that be something we should pursue here, where we have an individual development that has both affordable rental housing, less expensive, perhaps studio condominiums, as well as $600,000 or 800 or more, and so that we encourage people to live together as a group. In an urban environment, people are very comfortable with that, in my opinion. I mean, I find that city dwellers are excited about being around people who aren't exactly like them.
Thanks for the easy question. I appreciate that. Thanks. I don't know. It's a challenge to try to create that within a certain development, but it's probably a more thoughtful approach to look at a balanced overall environment. So, as German Village, which you mentioned, transitions, one thing that happens is it grows. So it grows towards Parsons right now. It's growing south into Marion Village. So I'm not sure how feasible it is to create some of those complete mixed-use projects individually, but I think if we focus on having that balance in an overall area, that's probably more achievable. That'd be my opinion.
George O'Donnell, CMC trustee. Let me compliment you four gentlemen for covering the wide array of detail that you did. Let me point out to you and the audience that Cleve Rexecker and his team, Community Crossroads, put together a report that covers the salient points that you brought out. One interesting point that I'd like to bring out in that report that Cleve put together, there are 87,000 plus or minus people working within the CBD. 25% of them walk to work. That speaks to what you mentioned, Brett, in terms of what's going on, in terms of bringing people back to the CBD. What do you see taking place in the future as it relates to that percentage?
Well, I think the percentage is going in the right direction. There will be more people maybe not even walking to work. We're hoping that they're just going down the elevator to work. But certainly as there's more to do downtown, people will not only walk to work, but they will walk to eat and walk to get their groceries and walk to do everything that you do where you live today. I think that's really headed in the right direction, and we're going to see more and more of that in the CBD.
Thank you. My name's Kevin Wood. I've been a downtown resident for 10 years now, and I absolutely love seeing all the exciting development taking place outside my window. My question, which Kyle, you didn't get a chance to get to, but Joel and Rob started to discuss, is the transportation and the connectivity. And as someone who does live downtown, I know that that is an issue for a lot of people. Money aside, if you could have that connectivity or transit, what would it be, and what do you think it will take for this community to get us there?
Well, there are some interesting things happening now that aren't nearly as expensive as light rail or a trolley system, whatnot. And you look at the KOGO program with the bicycles. You look at the Car2Go program. I went to a meeting earlier this morning and drove up 4th Street, and I saw 5 Car2Go. I think it's Car2Go. Is that right? Lining 4th Street, which means those people don't have automobiles and they're using it for a quick trip, but they're probably walking a lot of different places. So those things are exciting to see, and it obviously illustrates there's a desire and a need for some sort of simpler transportation.
It also means it was 60 degrees in December, and so those little cars can actually get around. But
And you told me today you weren't funny. That was pretty good.
I'm not. My wife reminds me every day of just not how funny I am. So, yeah.
But whether it's a trolley system or light rail, it would be wonderful to have something to connect, let's say, German Village to campus, or German Village to the short north, so people could avoid having to try to find a parking place. Or although if they want to park, we have an opportunity for them. So one of those mechanisms I think would be a wonderful addition to the city.
You didn't answer the second part. How do we get it done?
So we have Rob.
Left that for you.
Right.
This is a little off subject because you're talking mostly about the downtown and the short north. But there's that area between the short north and the campus. Is there any interest at all in developing that area?
Absolutely, and our opinion is one of the great things we're going to see in the next decade is the campus aggressively move south and the short north expand north. The natural borders are probably, King Avenue, maybe 7th for the short north, and then obviously campus would come down to that northernmost point, or their southernmost point rather, but we think that'll absolutely happen. I mean, our city has a lot in common with Austin in the way that we are, aligned, and they've got a wonderful stretch of 25 blocks from the river and the Capitol building all the way up to UT. And we have the exact same opportunity to do that here, and we believe that'll happen.
I hope so.
Ben Hale. I think this is probably a Rob question more than anything. I think there's a 1,000-pound gorilla in the room that nobody talks about, and that is that what I've been seeing recently over the last couple of years in the suburbs, Dublin, for instance, a lot of buildings were built there 20 and 25 years ago with parking ratios that were 5. And what's happened is, I think all over the country, is that office users are now packing a lot more people in a building. And so there are buildings out in the suburbs now who are terribly underparked. And when you see buildings downtown that are very well located, selling at very modest rates and being transferred into housing, to me, one of the reasons for that is lack of parking. And whether you're in the suburbs, whether you're Dublin in the suburbs or you're downtown, somehow you've got to, if you're going to have office downtown, and if you're going to get any reuse in these buildings downtown, you got to provide parking. And I really don't see, you see the residential stuff, Brett, everybody's providing adequate parking. But when you look at the office buildings, I don't see any conversation going on about how do we do structured parking downtown. And Rob, I think that's a very important subject, not only for Central Business District, but areas like Dublin, which have these office buildings, or Crosswoods, some of the older buildings that have been built in the suburbs.
What's interesting, Ben, is that we are actually beginning to see subtle changes in people's attitudes towards driving. I'm amazed when we start to look at the statistics that the number of 18-year-olds who aren't getting driver's license. I mean, would we have thought about that when we were 18 years old or 17 years old? Or
I drove at 15.
Or 15 in your case, Joel. I mean, it's incredible to me that generation that we're looking at today that's supporting all the apartments that we're talking about is putting less and less importance on driving and owning a car and that sort of thing. So I think it's an education process for our planners, our developers, that we don't need all the parking that we've got, and there are alternative ways to make these things work, and we just have to be creative. I agree that we need parking, and we will always need parking to some degree, but it's becoming less and less important of an issue.
My name is Franklin Conaway, a consultant to the Columbus Street Railway Company, a nonprofit entity that is working hard with the community to to address the connectivity problem through a modern streetcar circulator downtown. So I was very happy to hear the comments were made in recognizing the desirability of having such a transit system for the urban core. But eventually we will get a circulator, hopefully sooner than later. But one thing that I personally have observed about Columbus that differs from a lot of other cities of comparable size around the country and in the Midwest is that we have not used historic tax credits to the same level as other communities in order to provide affordable housing and workforce housing in the urban core. We have completed a survey in conjunction with the streetcar-based transportation-oriented development strategy that will be proposed for Columbus, and surprisingly came up with literally hundreds of thousands of square feet of vacant building space in the urban core, or nearly vacant, that would qualify for both federal and state tax credits, in addition to new market tax credits, because most of the downtown lies within a low income census tract. And that can account for over 50% of the cost of renovating the resource that we see exists in these buildings.
So just by comparison to Cleveland alone, they have done probably 9 times the tax credit work in their urban core that we have here in Columbus in the last 10 years. So just wanted to ask you to address that subject.
Well, Franklin, I agree with you totally that we do have a lot of opportunity downtown to create that type of housing environment. I think it takes a lot of, probably it's a much more difficult process than taking a piece of dirt that Brett and Joel have worked with in the past. It's a challenge to make a historic building work, as you know, all the problems that go with it. So I think it's a matter of educating our developers, let them know about the programs, let them know the buildings that are available. There's clearly a market there. We just need to get out there and notify folks that these are available at the right price, and it can be designed in a fashion that's going to respond to the market.
By the way, I'll mention one thing, and that is that Cleveland is ahead of us because they've got so much inventory. For a very long time, Columbus had Bill Smith, a laissez-faire attitude about demolition. We don't have that anymore. And the Downtown Commission works very hard to predict every project that exists today. So a lot of larger cities which had tremendous development at the turn of the 19th to 20th century and into those first few decades have that building stock. We've got a few buildings like that. That's all. We're just not as practiced. Good question, though, Franklin.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's forum. Remember that you can see it again and share it on YouTube through CMC's website. We encourage you to continue the conversation in our lobby over coffee and cookies. If you'd like to be added to our email list, just please put your card in your nameplate and we will follow back up with you. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Smith & Hale, and our speakers, Kyle Katz, Brett Kaufman, Joel Pizzuti, and Rob Volt. We appreciate all your information. Thank you so much.